Be with us today. Later in the service, we will take our share of the plate offering as a way to care for the wider world. Each month, we share our offering with an organization that embodies UU values in our world. This month's recipient is UU the Vote, which is responding to the need for a free and fair election with wide participation this November. UU the Vote is a nonpartisan initiative to engage our neighbors, mobilize voters, rally around key ballot initiatives, and engage in spiritually grounded, value-based issue conversations. During the offering later, you may put either cash or a check in the basket or donate online from our website, uunorthfield.org. If you're paying your pledge by check, please be sure to note in the memo line that this is for either the annual pledge or the capital pledge. There will also be instructions on the screen during the offertory time. Now, I call your attention to the announcements in your order of service and weekly email. There you'll find more information about the following. The UUFN Choir will have their first rehearsal on this Tuesday, August 27th, from 6 to 7:30 p.m. The date in the August reach is incorrect, so please note it is this Tuesday, August 27th. Please join us in making music, building community, and having a grand time on Tuesday, August 27th. Believe me, that's not a somber group, so you will really enjoy yourselves. Feel free to find or email Taylor after the service. There she is. If you have any questions or would like more information about joining this wonderful UUFN community. Save the date, September 6th, 6 o'clock p.m. We hope to see you here at the first soup supper of the season at UUFN. This is a great way to get to know folks who attend UUFN in a relaxed and festive way. Please RSVP either Gail Hendershot or Nita Wolf so that we will know how many will be attending, and everybody is welcome. Join us next Sunday for Gather at the Top Farm, our annual outdoor service. On this informal beginning of the church year, our UUFN service will be held at the Top Farm. And it's important to remember, please, that the service will start at 10:30 a.m. rather than our traditional time. The theme for September is the practice of invitation, and we would like to hear from members and friends. Please bring your prose or poetry or any other creation on this theme or another and what it means to you. Music will round out the service. We will gather outside, weather permitting, so please bring a chair and your own beverage, and please invite a guest. The address, and I hope I say this correctly, 26045 Ipava? Just like Ipana with a V. Ipava Avenue, Lakeville. There are more details on the back of today's church bulletin, or you can contact Bev or Lee. He called recently and said he's behind schedule. So I will by Wednesday decide whether we will be at the Top Farm or at an alternative venue, TBA. I don't know where that would be. But Beverly and I are not willing to risk your well-being, your craniums, and the rest of your body on tree limbs falling upon us. And I look for alternative places on the Top Farm. But we have so many old trees that I'm not sure I can find another. So I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad tidings, but to be continued. And I will let Jennifer know on Wednesday if
side on an alternative venue just in case.
Thank you.
Good to see all of you this morning, by the way.
Thank you, Lee. So besides bringing a guest, prose and poetry, bring your chainsaw. And a hard hat, yes. Again, welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Northfield. Thank you, Taylor. That was moving and beautiful. Our opening words today come from Diane Ackerman. The great affair, the love affair with life, is to live as variously as possible, to groom one's curiosity like a high-spirited thoroughbred, climb aboard and gallop over the thick, sun-struck hills every day. Where there is no risk, the emotional terrain is flat and unyielding, and despite all its dimensions, valleys, pinnacles, and detours, life will seem to have none of its magnificent geography, only a length. It began in mystery, and it will end in mystery. But what a savage and beautiful country lies in between. And now it's time for the lighting of the chalice. Our flaming chalice is the symbol of Unitarian Universalism. Each Sunday when we gather, we bring this symbol to life together. Please join me in speaking the words for the lighting of the chalice. Let us open our eyes to see what is beautiful. Let us open our minds to learn what is true. Let us open our hearts to love one another. And now, please rise in body or spirit as you are able for our opening hymn, number 121, We'll Build a Land. Okay, sharing of our joys and sorrows, let us move into our time of centering and connection. Spirit of life, draw near. Help us to become more aware of a greater love shimmering within and among us. Will you take a breath with me? In the presence of a love that holds us all, we use our chalice flame to light our candles of community. We light our first candle as a blessing for the wider world in this time of political turmoil. May hope guide our hearts as we seek a peaceful and just election, where every voice is heard and every vote is honored. May unity and fairness prevail, bringing us closer to a brighter and more harmonious future. One more candle in the honor of the joys and sorrows we carry in our hearts, but have not been spoken aloud. And we move into a time of silence. May the truth of your heart be reflected in these flames. I invite you to settle into a silence of your understanding, holding the truth of our lives and of the world in our hearts. Amen, and blessed be. We will now expand our circle of care as we gratefully give and receive our Share the Plate offering for UU the Vote. This is one way we can make our care for the world tangible. And will the ushers please come forward? Today we welcome Reverend Schuyler Vogel to our pulpit. Reverend Vogel is an ordained Unitarian Universalist minister with degrees from Carleton College and Harvard Divinity School. In his role as chaplain of the college, Schuyler serves as the college's senior clergy person and oversees religious, spiritual, and ethical life at Carleton. In addition to his work at Carleton, Schuyler serves as the president of the St. Lawrence Foundation for Theological Education and as the secretary of the Human Rights Commission here in the city of Northfield. Welcome, Reverend Vogel.
Thank you all for having me. It's lovely to be back. I think this is my third time with you, and it's always wonderful to be back with other Unitarian Universalists and in such a lovely community. As you probably know and just heard a little bit, last summer I became the new chaplain at Carleton, and it was a homecoming, having graduated myself in 2007. I was familiar with the world of cows, colleges, and contentment, but I had still been gone a long time. Returning to Northfield was a physical relocation and also a significant professional shift. Physically, it meant moving my family from the Upper West Side of Manhattan, a neighborhood that alone contains more than 200,000 people. We lived on the 8th floor of our congregation's parsonage, which overlooked Central Park, and said goodbye to a congregation we had served for 7 years. Professionally, my years in New York had been action-packed. I arrived right in time for the 2016 election. We shortly became a sanctuary congregation after that to house undocumented people who were slated for deportation. We saved our historic building, once dubbed the Cathedral of Universalism, from literal collapse. We survived the pandemic together. We practiced civil disobedience together. My wife and I were married during those years and had our first child, both of which that congregation celebrated with us. After moving to Carleton and Northfield, I quickly learned that becoming a college chaplain would be very different, although I didn't realize it immediately. As you might know, our tradition, Unitarian Universalism, is all about congregations. Our denominational body is literally called an association of congregations. Most jobs for UU ministers are in congregations, and that is where I've spent my entire professional life, outside of 1 year back in 2008. I'd always thought about returning to Carleton. I'd worked at the chapel as a student, but I always knew it was a long shot. I couldn't expect or plan for it. It was really strange to have devoted my entire professional adult life to congregations and then suddenly no longer be in one. To have spent years developing certain skills and thinking about congregations all the time, how to make them successful, grow, work in boards and committees and preach every Sunday, and just have it all over just like that. Except for that 1 year when I was 23, I've never, as an adult, even had a consistent 2-day weekend. In congregations, ministers have tremendous power and freedom to say what they please. The tradition of freedom of the pulpit is enshrined in Unitarian Universalism, as it is in certain other traditions. Clergy are expected to speak the truth as they see it, weaving together the shared values of their communities with the issues of the day. Congregations, in their part, are free too. They govern themselves, accountable to no bishops, no popes, only to themselves, their missions, and their values. So here I am now, beyond the congregation, except when you graciously invite me in. And I'm realizing just how different my new life and ministry are. Unlike in my congregation who voted on me and called me, the college community where I now serve did not select me as a whole. The search committee and ultimately the president did. In my congregation, I was expected to preach every week. I don't preach at Carleton. The role here at Carleton is one of counselor, both of students and also to the administration, staff, and faculty. It is as an administrator and an educator. There is the somewhat lofty framing of the chaplains as the conscience of the college. But unlike when I was a senior minister, I have little concrete or operational power. And like all staff and administration, my role is embedded firmly in the college hierarchy. I didn't think much about all of that and the difference in terms of freedom and power until October 7th happened. The horrors of that day, paired with the subsequent horrors rained down in Gaza, made the difference in my work very stark. I was not, first of all, expected on the next Sunday or any Sunday after to preach on what was going on in the Middle East, like I would have in my congregation. There were very different expectations. I was asked to craft the college's first public message following October 7th, a very delicate task. I took point in talking with the many alumni, donors, and parents deeply concerned about how the Jewish students at Carleton were experiencing what was going on. They were watching the news at Columbia and Harvard and feared for anti-Semitism at Carleton. I led processing sessions with students, served on a newly formed college security team, and was a confidential research for those organizing to demand Carleton divest from Israel, encamped outside of the chapel and eventually seizing the administration building of Laird Hall. What I was not expected to do was share my own perspective on the conflict. It was clear, without it needing to be said, that to do so would risk undermining the college, the administration, and the delicate balance that we were trying to perform. My role was not simply to speak truth to power, come what may, but work within and beyond the college to ensure its well-being, its stability, and its moral integrity. I was part of a system now, tasked with responsibilities and maintaining order, as much as encouraging the college to live its values. You could argue that the conflict in Gaza is unusually difficult and divisive. I admit I would certainly have felt more comfortable speaking prophetically about a host of other things, even at Carleton. But still, the conflict between and contrast between my role at the college, my previous life in the congregation, would still be very real. Fortunately, everyone at Carleton, including students, understood the delicate balance that I and the other chaplains were trying to take. To be stewards of the college's moral compass, but also maintain positive relationships with all sides and serve as representatives for the college itself and its stated positions. Those who understood the least, to my surprise, were other clergy. Their criticism was the hardest to hear. Now, my identity and my self-image, perhaps with some personal pride attached, was that I have been a social justice minister. I try to care deeply about the world and the people in it. I tried to authentically do the work in my last congregation, using the power I had to push a moral agenda. In New York, no one questioned my social justice credentials, in part because our congregation took real risks that others wouldn't. We pushed the boundaries where it was possible. Fourth Universalist, my old congregation, was, almost by definition, an activist congregation. We held rallies, we got arrested, we did things that people noticed that made us immune from questioning. We followed our conscience freely and boldly. When I told one clergy colleague that things at Carleton were relatively calm, an outcome to me that was the result of working hard to ensure that all people on campus were being respected and held with care, their response was, "Well, that's too bad." I would have expected more from all of you. Another clergy person urged me to speak out against the college's refusal to divest from Israel. They suggested that if I did not, I was betraying my call and my values. What matters more than this, they said. Some things matter more than a job, and I should be prepared to lose mine rather than do nothing. Another, when I shared with them the complex balancing act I felt like I was being asked to juggle, told me that their conscience would never have allowed them to take a job like I did, suggesting, it felt to me, as if I had compromised my principles, simply by acquiescing to a role where I didn't have the complete freedom and power to act as I wished. I admit that it hurt to hear things like this. All of a sudden, I was just another lukewarm ally, someone who talked about justice and peace but wouldn't do the right thing when asked. All the work we had done in New York City didn't matter. I was compromised, lacking courage, betraying my conscience and call. It was hard to not take these comments seriously and personally, especially when I had hoped that clergy, my colleagues of all people, might understand best. Were they right? Was I afraid? Should I have been more combative, more confrontational? Should I have risked losing my job? Was I betraying the responsibility that I had? What I struggled with then and now, and I'm sure in the future, was a judgment coming from people who seemed more interested in telling me how to act than learning about why we were acting as we did. It's easy to demand ideological purity and uncompromising action when you aren't responsible for supporting diverse communities of hurting and vulnerable people. It's easier when you aren't directly responsible for the consequences of or harm that such brashness and certainty might lead to. It's much simpler to speak truth to power if that power isn't the boss who can fire you, an institution you care about, or someone you respect who is doing their best but is under tremendous pressure. It felt like these responses that I got from my clergy colleagues dismissed not only our work at Carleton, but the lived experiences of most regular people who live in a world where they are not free 100% of the time to say and do whatever they want. Most of us have supervisors, conflicting responsibilities, and have to manage complex relationships and dynamics that demand nuance, sensitivity, and level-headedness. For me to speak out forcefully about my personal opinion, whatever that may be, and that is still a conflicted part of my own perspective, regarding the colleges divesting from Israel, it would have been explosive. The drama it would have brought down upon the college from alumni and parents and donors and even potentially the media would have been potentially devastating. Relationally, it would have meant sacrificing the trust and care of one group of vulnerable students for another. The positive impact of any moral stand at Carleton would have been minimal and performative, while the potential damage to the college, to the chapel, and the students could have been immense. So I've tried to make peace with my role. I've tried to resolve to not let others define me or anyone I work with as less committed to liberation and justice simply because our work in our given time and our role is different. My role in the professional ministry at Carleton is no longer to be able to be the radical activist who says and does whatever I want and think at any moment of time, come what may. Maybe it can be outside of work. Maybe there are such times and moments at Carleton where such prophetic work is required and necessary, where its impact isn't fundamentally risking harming someone or students on behalf of some others. And in some ways, I look forward to those moments. It's tremendously powerful to have that clarity, have the lane to be able to speak what you feel out loud without worry. But at least in this moment, with these dynamics, I have a different job. Right now, I look to those who do have power and freedom. Students who have tremendous freedom to speak their minds and hearts, alumni and donors who do as well, perhaps tenured faculty wield the most potent combination of freedom and power. The burden to speak and act is not on me or anyone alone. All of us, as moral people trying to do our best in the world, are called to wrestle with these questions. What roles do we play, and where does our power rest? At work, where we volunteer, through family and friends? Where can we make a difference, take a moral stand? And when do we have to take a more supportive role and let someone else stand up? We have to be able to balance both our obligation to work for justice, which is essential, along with the grace we give ourselves and others to remind us that we are only one person with a complex set of responsibilities, relationships, and roles. We have to work for change, but reduce the inappropriate burden placed on our shoulders to believe that one person, often themselves embedded in systems of injustice, are uniquely responsible instead of being vulnerable themselves. I think about the words from the Jewish tradition. You are not obligated to complete the work, but neither are you free to abandon it. You might not be able to speak the truth to power that you want without getting fired from your job. You might not be able to force the organization you volunteer with to take the moral stand you want. There are limits. That is life. Does that mean we can do nothing? Of course not. We can look for where we have power, where we have freedom, where our role can be one of change. And one of those places, as I know from my 15 years of serving them, is in the congregation. You all have such great freedom here. You all can do and say almost anything. The First Amendment is real and powerful. You have freedom of the pulpit. You literally exist as a community because of shared values, a vision for the world, and a commitment to being together and showing up. Does that mean everyone in a congregation agrees? Of course not. Can relationships in congregations be complicated? Yeah. But here, unlike so many other places, there is no one who can tell you you can't advocate for UU values. You have no bosses at UUFN. The minister does not control you. Our clergy are leaders and collaborators, not dictators. The very purpose of congregational life is to take this beautiful tradition that we all share, we've inherited it, and to live into what it means today. To care for each other and our wider community and leave all of us better than when we found it. We're about to face a really intense fall and probably winter, with an election whose outcome is very much uncertain. So start thinking about the role that this congregation can play. A role that is fortified both by the freedom to act and the power of your collective strength. How do you ensure that you leave it all on the field in support of UU values? How do you prepare for the many scary possibilities that are very possible after November? How might you respond, for example, to massive ice raids in Northfield, to the implementation of Project 2025, the unrest that might come from the denial of legitimate election results? Don't be caught by surprise, nor feel powerless in the face of what might come. If you are worried about your ability to do the good work, if you feel constrained somewhere in your life, like you can't be the voice or the actor for change that you might want, you can take a deep breath. And then remember that this place, of all places, can be your place, that it is different. In a UU congregation, you can and you must speak truth to power. You must organize for justice without apology or hesitation. You must remain vigilant to moments where justice can be done, and then in those moments, do them. As the congregation of our faith, this is your responsibility, and it is also your joy. Being involved in a congregation removes the excuse to do nothing, because here you are free. We are free in our congregations, free as leaders. You not only have an obligation, but the power to do the good work. This is a great gift. I am jealous in many ways from my new role of what you can do, of the great freedom and possibility you all have. But I will do the work where I can. I just ask that you do yours. The world needs it and may need it even more very soon. May it be so, and amen.
Thank you, Reverend Schuyler. Please rise in body or spirit for the closing hymn number 298, Wake Now My Senses. The hymn that never ends.
Oh, they're on the other page.
Thank you. Our closing words are from Max A. Coots in a piece titled After. After the words, a quiet. After the songs, a silence. After the crowd, only the memory recalls the gathering. Peace and justice have need of you after the words, the music, and the gathering. May you be granted the depth for dedication to justice. May you be granted the will to be an apostle of peace. Amen. And now we will extinguish our chalice. Please join in the words for extinguishing our chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we are in our hearts until we are together again. And before we sing our closing hymn, I do want to remind you again, next week, right now, it is scheduled for the Top Farm. I assume you'll let us know during the week.
Make every effort. I will contact Jen, and she'll put it online. I expect Wednesday,
Okay.
perhaps Thursday.
So please watch for that, and do remember the time of the service is 10:30 as opposed to 10. Anne Maria and Peter, congratulations again. So please rise in body and spirit, and with your hands over your heart, holding a hand of those next to you, or whatever posture is most comfortable for you. Join us as we sing words of blessing one to another.